Assalamu alaikum everyone. We have finally reached the last week of this session. This is week 10, lecture 28 for CS 116 object oriented programming. So let's begin. Okay, this is a really quick recap of last week. What we did in week 9, we discussed how we can apply object oriented concepts while developing GUIs, graphical user interfaces. Now, in this week, we'll explore some miscellaneous topics. Like these topics, they are not directly related to object-oriented programming, but these are really important concepts when it comes to software development. So the first topic that we are discussing is event logging. So today we'll see what event logging is, why we need event logging, and we'll see some examples where this event logging concept is used extensively. And then we'll see what support does Python provides for event logging. Basically, it provides a whole module for it. So we'll see how we can use that module, and we'll see how, this event logging thing works. Now, what event logging is? Logging simply means keeping track of events when a software runs or when an application runs. And how we can keep track of these events? We can record these events in a file. Like we can store this event information in a file, or we can just simply print it on the console on the output screen, or we can pass it to some network socket to some other machine or device, or we can simply communicate it to the user as a simple message. So in short, it means that we are recording everything that happens when a software runs, and the user of that application doesn't know about that, right? And when we say that we have an event log, most of the times we mean that there is a file, there is a log file at the backend, and that contains information about the usage and operation of operating system application devices. Like when your application runs, that information is recorded in a file, and that file is called the event log. Now, there are several very important uses of event logging. The first and the foremost being that it helps in software troubleshooting. Now, this doesn't mean that you cannot troubleshoot or debug your software without logging the events that occur when your software or application runs. But if you are not logging events, then troubleshooting may take a lot of time. But if you are recording the events or the state of your application at each step, then what will happen? You will exactly know the state of your application or the software at the time when the error occurred, and you can even save the values of the variables in your log file, and that can help you debug the application really quickly. Because see, it's just like leaving a trail of breadcrumbs. So if something goes wrong, you can simply track that trail, and you can find the error pretty much easily and quickly. Then it can help you understand your program flow. Like the logged events, they may uncover scenarios that you might not have thought of while writing the code. So it's just like a second pair of eyes that's keeping track of everything that's going on in a software or in an application. Then you can use the recorded information for software improvement. Like you can keep track of running time of various parts of your application. Like you can see how much time a loop takes to run, or how much time a function takes to run, and then you can use that information to improve your program or scale your application better. Or you can see that which parts of your program, let's suppose it's a commercial application, so these logs, they can help you keep track that which parts of the application or which interfaces are used more as compared to the other, and that information can be used for planning better marketing strategies. Now, another very important usage is in security and performance audits, and this is of prime importance when it comes to network applications. So you can use these logs, or auditors can use these logs to see usage information, user login information, and then they can see how security is being implemented how the team or people in that association, they troubleshooted the issues. So logs, they keep track of everything, so auditors can use that information to monitor overall performance of a system. Like, you see, again, this can be done manually also, but when the softwares, they become large, and the systems, they are really really complex, so it becomes very difficult to do that manually. So there, these logs, they are of critical importance. Now, what information should be logged? That entirely depends on the programmer, like what information you want to put in those log files. Uh, you can record every operation if you want, like each and every step, states of all the variables, the running times, and the output of every statement. You can record that in a file, or you can record only errors, like application errors, closures, like some unexpected events or exceptions. You are recording only exceptions in a file. Or you can select some important events, and then you can keep track of those events in a log file. For example, you can keep track of login information, uh, login IDs, IP addresses, unsuccessful login attempts. So, like, I mean, you can choose some information, some specific information that you want to keep track of. So it varies from programmer to programmer, and it varies from application to application, like which information you want to keep track of. These logs, they obviously provide a better insight than merely a stack trace. We know when an error occurs, a trace is produced automatically by Python. So that contains a lot of information, but logs, they provide you even more information, presented in a much better way as compared to those stack traces. Now, let's see some examples where these event logging mechanisms are used frequently. One of the most common scenarios is operating systems. Operating systems, they literally keep track of everything that happens when a user logs in to that operating system. So Windows event log or Windows event logger is a very good example to discuss here. So it keeps tracks of all the happenings on the system. Like, if you are doing something to a file, you are opening a file, renaming a file, deleting a file, copying file from one place to another, Windows keep track of all those happenings. Then if you are even modifying system state, Windows keeps an eye on that too. You are shutting down the system, or if you are logging in or logging out through some specific account, Windows keep track of that. And then if you are changing systems configuration, all those details, they are recorded by Windows in its event log files. Actually, Windows, they it has categories of event logs, like system logs, security logs, application logs, directory services, network logs, and it keeps them, organized in different folders. I'll show that to you shortly. And this information, it can be used by the administrator to tighten security and to monitor overall events that are happening in a system. So let me show you where you can find this information in Windows. Now, if you come to the main screen here on Windows icon, just right click and select Computer Management. Here on this left hand side pane, you'll see this event viewer. This event viewer is basically the event logger of Windows. So if I click it, see, here are some categories, then there are some subcategories. These are the ones that I just showed you shortly. And let's suppose if I click on the security, see, it's keeping track of all the times when I logged onto the system. So if I just click any of these, see, it is showing me the date and time, the ID, and a lot of other information too. So I don't expect you to go through all these options and try to understand everything. I just wanted to show you where this event logger resides in Windows. This is another area where event logging is vital. In network systems, it helps keep track of network traffic, usage, and many other conditions. And this information, it can be used by security professionals or auditors to monitor overall performance of the system. And since this the amount of data is really really huge, so it's really difficult for these security professionals or other auditors to monitor everything or go through all those log files manually. So there are sophisticated softwares for this purpose also. So these softwares, they are called SIEM, security information and event management tools. And these are really expensive software, and they are used to analyze the data generated by event logging in a network system. And then that analysis, that helps an administrator or a security professional or an auditor to see what's going on within a network. Now let's come to Python, and now we'll see how we can create event logs for our own applications. So as we know that Python has a rich set of libraries, so there is a module for logging also in Python, and that is called the logging module. And the good thing is that it's a built-in module. You don't have to install it. It's already there in Python's standard library. So you just import this module and you can use it. Now, before starting to explore this logging module, let me clarify one thing. Some of you might be thinking that this logging information or writing information to a file is simply a write function. Like you can use simple print function to display this information on a screen, like Python does that when an error occurs. Or you can simply write all that stack trace in a file or any other information in a file by yourself too, using that save to file methods. Obviously, you can do that. You can use this print function or write to file functions, but using this logging module, it provides you a lot more functionality. In fact, automated functionality than this. Like what it can do, it can store timestamps and line numbers automatically with errors, which you might not know beforehand before running the program. So it does that automatically. And then um, you can write to the console, like on the shell, and you can also write to a file. But apart from that, you can also send the information to some other device or to some network socket. And another strength of this module is that it helps you categorize those events based on severity. Like you can categorize them as simple log information, or warnings, or errors, or you can build any categories as you want using this logging module. Now let's see how we can use this logging module. Now this logging module, it offers a number of different classes and interfaces. And the most important of them all is this logger object. Of course, we won't be able to explore everything in this single lecture. The main purpose is just to give you an idea how things work. Later, you can explore if you want to know more. So here, the first object, or the main object, which you should know about, is the logger object. And it provides the main interface for this class. You need this logger object to call all the main methods of this module. So main methods or other functions of this module. So how you can get this logger object? There are two ways. If you are not creating your own logger object, then this logging module, it creates a default object, and you can use that default object and call every method that you want. And that default object is named root, right? So wherever you see the name root, that means it's the default logger. Apart from this, there is a function called getLogger. You can use this getLogger function to create a custom logger object. I'll show you shortly how to use this getLogger. In fact, I'll show you both the approaches shortly in the upcoming slides. Now, Python divide the logs into 5 categories. That means that on the basis of severity of an event, you can classify a log as one of these 5 types. These are 5 standard or default levels that are provided by this logging module by default, and then you can create your own logging levels also, but these 5s are usually enough, and it is recommended that you should not create your own levels that interfere with these default levels. So these 5 levels are enough, and they can be used to store like any kind of information that you want to store about a program. Now, there is a method for each type of these logging levels. Like if you want to, let's suppose about level 1. So if you want to create a log in level 1 category, there is a separate method for that. And if you want to create a log as part of the second category, then there is a different method for that. So let's see what methods are these. And first of all, let's see what these levels are. Now let's see what these 5 levels are. They are in the increasing order of severity. So the least severe level is the debug level. Now let's see certain things about this statement first. First of all, you see there is a number associated with debug, 10. That actually Python associates a level number also with each severity level. So debug is assigned level 10, or you can say this indicates the severity of this level. Then in the end, you see that there is a method name in red color, debug, and in bracket, I'm passing just one argument, which is message. Now, what does this mean? That if you want to log some statement or some variable or some information in this category, in debug category, what you have to do, you have to call this method. So as I told you on last slide, you need a logger object. You can create a logger object, or you can use the default logger object, and using that logger object you can call this method. So let's suppose your logger object is called mylogger, so you can call mylogger dot debug, and in the bracket you just pass the string which you want to log into the log file. So that string, it could be a message, or you can convert any variable or any other information to string, and you can simply write it to the file along with this category name. Actually, writing the name of that category is optional. I'll show you shortly how you can use it. But if you are using this method, that means you are categorizing your message or information as level 1 logging information, right? Now, apart from message, you can pass some other parameters also. But we are not going into that much detail. You can see that in standard documentation. I'll provide you the link towards the end of this lecture. We'll be exploring, I think, only one of those attributes further in the upcoming slides. So for now, we'll use all these methods with just one argument, which is the actual message or the information string that we want to log into the file, right? Now, this first level along with the second level, if you see the second level is called the info level, and it is assigned the number 20, and you can call this method using you can log using this logging level by calling this method info, and the same pattern as of debug. Now these 2 levels, they are the basic levels, and they are used to log information when your program is running normally. Like for example, you want to store the values input by the user, or you want to store some intermediate state of your variables or objects, then you can use these. Like any information which you want to store apart from errors or warnings or anything serious, that comes under these 2 levels. Now debug level is different in the sense that you store a more detailed account in debug level, like the information that can be used if your program is not working properly, it has some logical errors or some other kind of issue arises, then the information logged by this level can be used for debugging. So basically both these levels, they are used to store uh, information under normal conditions, and debug is a more detailed level as compared to info, and the information stored there might be used in case your program crashes or some error occurs. Now the third level, which is assigned level number 30, is called warning. and you can simply use this warning method to log any information under this category. Now, what kind of information would you like to log under this category? Something, if you want to warn user about something, like it is not crashing your program, it is not causing any fatal error to your program, but it can cause some error in future. For example, like if user is assigning a very long name to a file or something like that, which could cause problem later in the code, then you can log that information using this. So anything which is not as severe as an error or an exception, that can be logged here. That could be a potential error, or that can cause a logical error in future. You can log it under this heading of warning, or under this category of warning. Then this fourth level of severity, 40, is called the error level. Basically all those errors that you cater in exceptions, or on which Python raises exception, or which you can catch using that try except block, they are categorized here. So I'll show you how to use this. This level, it can even be used to log that stack trace or whole exception to the log file as well. So this is used when some error occurs in your code. And the last most critical level is called critical, and the number assigned to it is 50, and the method name is critical. And this is used when there is no other choice. Like if you think that if something happens that can crash the software, that should be logged under this category. So you see, these are those 5 categories, and they are assigned a specific number. They are all called using similar pattern. Only the name of the method is different, but the arguments, they are the same. Now you see, these are some numbers that they have assigned to these levels by default. Then you can define your own logging levels also, and you can use numbers apart from these 5 numbers. But as I said earlier, that is not recommended, and these 5 levels, they are enough to categorize any kind of log that you want to make. Now before moving on, let's see some examples to put everything together. Like to let's see how things that we have studied so far work. So in this first example, what I'll do, I'll try to log a message under one of those 5 categories using those methods that we saw on the last slide. Now, as I told you that in order to call those methods, you require a logger object. Now, in this example, we are using the default logger, right? So what you have to do, first of all, you have to import that built-in module. You don't have to install this package because this is present in the standard library of Python. And after that, I'm writing this simple statement. Now in this statement, first of all, you see logging dot critical. You know, critical is the name of that method that you need to call if you want to log any message or some information under this category. And in bracket, I have given a message. So this message is what I want to be written to onto the logs, right? Now, the first term, logging dot, it's there because it's the module name. I hope you remember when you import a module and you try to access any class from that module, there are 2 methods. Either you use this, you use module name dot, and then you can access any class or method or anything, or you can use a different import statement, like from logging import static or import, and then you write the number of you write the names of the methods or classes. So you can do that too. So here logging dot means the module name, right? So here I am not using any explicit logger name. That means that I want to use the default logger, and name of that default logger is root. Now if you run this statement, this simple statement, just these 2 lines, you write them in the file. In fact, you can find them, these 2 lines, in the corresponding code file that I have provided to you along with this lecture. If you run this, this is going to be the output. Now you see, at the end, the message is there. This is a critical message, but before that, there are 2 pieces of information appended to this message. The first one, critical, is the name of the level, is the name of the severity level, and then root is the name of the default logger, as I told you, right? And you see, the information is separated by colons. So that's the standard form, or you can say this is the default uh, manner in which an information is logged into the log file. So your message is there, and along with your message, severity level and name of the logger is also logged into the file, and all the information is separated using these colons, right? So apart from this method critical, you can use any other method as well. Let me show you that in example 2. Okay, one thing that I just forgot to tell you on last slide, that by default all these methods, they log the information on console. And by this I mean that they simply print whatever you want to log on the console, and console means the standard shell output, right? It's not writing to any file. If you want to write to file, you have to make a different arrangement. I'll show that to you shortly. But right now we have seen two defaults. The first one is the output format, that first of all it writes the name of the level, severity level, colon, name of your logger, colon, then your message. This is the first default that we saw on last slide, and the second default is that by default all these methods, they write to the console or standard shell output. So in this example I'll use the same thing, but this time I'll call all 5 methods. So first of all, I'll import this module, logging module. This is my first statement. I'm calling this method using the default logger root, and I'm logging this message, harmless debug message. Then I'm calling info, and I'm logging another message, just an information. These are the two levels which you use under normal circumstances. Now then comes the warning. It is a warning, and then an error. Did you try to divide by 0? We know that dividing by 0, it causes uh, exception or error. And okay, this is some kind of critical warning, because if internet is down, then your software cannot do anything and it simply stops working. It might stop working if it is using internet for some service. Okay, now if I run this code, this is the output that I would get. You see, warning message is printed. Warning is the name of the level, then root is the name of the default logger, then the message is printed. Same is for error, and then critical. Now you see here, out of these 5, only 3 messages are printed. Now here comes another default. By default, only only that information is logged which is of level warning or above, of level 30 or of level 30 or above, right? That means that by default, debug and info level logs, they are not stored, or they are not printed on a screen, or the information given in debug and info level, they are not logged, right? So again, it's a default. You can change this, and if you want those debug and info level information also to be logged into a file or onto screen, then you can change that. But by default, it starts from level 30 and above, and 30 belongs to warning level, right? So here what I was telling you. So now we have 3 defaults, that by default it uses a default logger. Then we saw, in fact, 4 defaults. The default logger is the first, then the printing output format is the second. Third one is that it by default it writes to the console, or it logs to the console. And fourth one is that by default it only logs the information of warning level or above, right? Now let's come to this another very important function in logging module, and it is called basic config. And this function is used to change those defaults. I talked about some defaults on in last 2 examples. If you want to change those defaults, you have to configure your logger using this basic config function, right? Now how you can do that, it's really simple. Like we always do, there are some parameters that you can set through these options, and that's how you can change all those. So there is a long list of these parameters that you can find in standard documentation. I'll discuss only few here which could be of interest to us during this lecture. So the first one is level. If you want to change the level, as I told you that by default it starts logging information from the third level, which is warning. But if you want to log information from debug or info, or if you want to even skip warning too and you start from error, if you want to start from error or critical level, you can set the level using this parameter level. So you'll simply write level is equals to, and then name of the level from where you want to start logging information. So if I want to log everything, so I would write level is equals to debug. Now second is that you can set a file name and a file mode too, and this is going to be the log file. If you don't want to log onto console, which happens by default, then you can provide a file name, and you can provide a mode too. By mode, we mean that by default it uses the append mode. That means that it will always append to the last log. But if you want to overwrite the log every time, you can open this file in W mode as well. So uh, by default it's A, and you can change it to W as well. Of course, you cannot use a read mode because you want to write that file. So you would like to open that file or either in A mode or in W mode. And the last one is format. This can be used to do a lot of magic. I'll show that to you shortly. So this is simply a string that will set the format of that output string. By format, I mean, you saw in the last example that we were getting the print as level name colon logger name colon your message. If you want to change that format, you can do that using this parameter. Now, one very important thing to note about this function is that it can only be called once in a program. So either you call it as the first statement of your program, and if you are not doing that, and then you start calling those level methods, debug, info, warning, error, or critical, then what will happen? Those methods, they also call this function by default. So if you are not calling it by yourself as first statement, then those functions will those methods will be calling it by default. So if you call it by yourself after running those functions, then your call is going to be the second call, and that will not be counted. So the main point here is that you should call it only once, and the first call is considered. So either it should be you who is configuring it, otherwise it will be configured to the defaults using any of these methods if you call these methods before calling this method explicitly. Okay, this is what I've already told you. This is the default writing pattern on console. Now let's see how you can use that format parameter in basic config method. Now, as I told you that you just have to pass the message as a string, but you can print some additional information also along with your actual string. And now that string, it could be anything. It could be a general message, or it could be some variable or object converted to string that you want to log into file or onto the console, right? Now, how can you place additional information apart from that message? What happens here? Logging, actually, this logging module, it maintains a set of attributes that define the state when logging event occurs. And when logging event occurs, event occurs when you call any of those 5 methods. So let's suppose you are calling basic or you are calling info method. So at the instance when that method will be called in your program while running, there are some attributes that will be maintained for that specific point. Now, again, there is a long list of those attributes, but I'm just listing here few interesting ones. And you can print these attributes along with your message into the log file or onto the console, logging console, right? So let's see what these are. This is the first one. This is actually the same message that you will pass through that method, debug or info. So how, if you how you will print it, you'll just write format is equals to, format is the parameter in that basic config method. So format is equals to, and you'll use this same format written here, that %sign bracket message. Now here this message is kind of a keyword, and then at the end you are placing that small s. Small s means that it is going to be a string type of element. So whatever you whatever message that you will pass later using those 5 methods, any of those 5 methods, that message will be replaced here. So wherever you place this format in that format string, your message will be printed at that at that point. I think this is not this won't be very clear without an example, so I'll show you example on the next slide. Just go through these attributes first. Now this is second very interesting attribute, ASCII time. Actually what it will do, if you use this format, percent, then this keyword ASC time, and then S, then what will happen, the exact date and time at which that logging event occurred, that date and time will be printed along with your message, right? This is the third one. You can even write the name of the function in which that logging event occurred, the name of the function in your code, that can also be printed. Then level name, by default this level name is also printed, critical, debug, info, any of those 5 levels, and you can change the position of that level name as you want in the output. Then level number, line number can also be printed where that logging event occurred. And then you can also print the name of the logger, like by default root is printed, which is the name of the default logger, but I'll show you shortly that if you are using custom defined logger, then you have to print that name by yourself, otherwise by default it's not printed. Now in order to understand this, let's see a quick example. Here first of all I'm importing this module, and then I'm using this basic config function. Now you see I'm using that parameter format, and in format I'm specifying a format actually. So first of all I'm using that attribute ASCII time, that means that date and time will be printed here, then a hyphen will be placed in the output, and then whatever message I provide in any of those level methods, that message will be printed. So this is how I'll set the format. Now for message I'll call that method, let's suppose I'm calling this warning method admin logged out, and what I expect here now, that first date and time will be printed, then a hyphen will be printed, and then my message will be displayed on the screen. So let's see the output. Here it is. You see there's a specific format, and last number 959 is actually a fraction of that second, I think nanoseconds it is, and then my message is printed. You can even change the format of this date and time if you want. There are additional parameters for that too. Now let's see one more example. In this example, you see I have added a file name also. So I'm using that file name parameter, and I'm using this name test.log. So now whatever message, this message that I showed you in the last slide, this one, along with the date and time, it will not be printed on screen or on console, but it will be logged on into this file. So if you run this code, nothing will be printed at the output, but at the end you'll see that this file has been created, test.log, and if you see that file, you'll see this output in that file. Okay, a few more examples. Now let's see how you can create a custom logger. For creating a custom logger, you require this method get logger. Sorry, this is a function actually, get logger, and you assign a name to your logger. This is a name that is going to be printed in place of root in the log. So that's how you define it. I'm assigning the returned object to L. So now I can use this L to call any of the methods. So I'm calling this method critical on L, and this is the output. Now one thing that you should notice here, that if you are not using the default logger, the default output format is different. Now here it is not printing the name of the level, which is critical, and not even the name of your logger, which is my logger in this case, and which was root in the previous case. If you want to add that information, you have to set that configuration using that basic config method. So here is an example for that. So see here I'm writing the level name first, colon, then the name of my logger. A name actually refers to the name of my logger, which is my logger in this case, and then my message will be printed. And see, now it produced the output that I was expecting in example 3. Now this is the last thing that I want to show you in this module. I talked about logging a whole exception or stack trace into the log file. You can do that using this method exception. So you can call this method exception using the logger. You can provide a custom message. This message will be printed, and after this message, whole stack trace will be printed into your log file or onto the console, whatever you have opted. Okay, and but the main point about this, that it should only be called from exception handler. Like the preferred place from where you should call it is the except block of your code. I'll show you an example shortly. And there is an alternate way too. If you don't want to call this method exception, then you can set this parameter exception underscore info. Exc is for exception underscore info. You can set it to true. Then you call this error method. Error is the fourth level of your logging levels. You can use that method also to print stack trace. So these are two alternate ways, but the first one is, I think, more convenient. Now let's see a very quick example to put everything together. Here what I'll do, I'll simply input an integer from user, right? I'll write a very simple small code to input an integer for user, and whatever user inputs, I'll simply log that value into a file, into a log file called value log, right? Now that means the value that user enters, that will be logged along with time and date information, and if some exception occurs, that will also be logged into this file. So here's the code. I'll first import this logging module, then I'm setting configuration. Actually, I'll be using info level to store the information. So we know that by default that does not get logged. So for that I need to set the level first. So I'm setting first parameter is of level. Level is set to logging.info. Info is basically a constant in this module, logging module. So I have to access it using logging dot operator. Then I'm setting the file name to value.log. And then I'm setting a format in which first date and time will be printed, then a hyphen will be printed, and then my message will be printed. So, okay, I want to print exception also, so I'm using this try except block. So here I'm asking the user to enter an integer, and we know when exception will be generated if user enters something non-integer or non-number. No, if a non-number value is entered, then exception will be raised. Okay, whatever user enters, I'm just logging that value into that file. So now when I call this function info, what will happen? Date and time will be printed into that file value.log, followed by a hyphen and followed by this value. And in except block, I am logging the exception. So if I enter this except block, then this message will be logged into my log file error, and after that whole stack trace will also be stored. Now what I'll do here, I'll run that program multiple times. So during first run, let's suppose user enters 4. Second run, user enters 55, which is a normal run. And in third run, user enters T, which will cause exception. So let's see what will be logged into that file. Okay, this is the name of that log file, value.log. Okay, now this is the first information that will be logged when user enters 4. So date and time is there, followed by a hyphen and followed by the value that user enters. Here is the result of the second run. Since I was opening that file in default append mode, so information is appended one after the another. And this is the third one. And here you see whole stack trace is saved into that file. So if user wants to see what happened, if user complains, let's suppose that my program crashed, the programmer can go through this file and see what happened actually. Okay, user entered something non-integer and my program was not able to handle it, so that's why it crashed. So this log file can be used there. So we learned about event logging today, what event logging is, where it is used, and we explored this logging module of Python. And this is the main resource from where you can get more information, because we explored just a small portion of this module. If you want to explore more, you can go to this official documentation of Python. It's a really, really good resource, and you can find more details over there. Thank you.